Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, AlphaFish here, and today we are looking at one of my alts. We are going to be looking at darknest and how to properly hit specific darknest, especially if your guild is trying to break through the next ceiling and take on the next level of darknest. Alright, so let's get to it, guys. So we're going to start out looking at, and it's KVK, so my guild is, my guild hive has a bunch of holes in it because people are out gathering or whatnot, but let's start out at level 1 and scout a bunch of level 1 darkness. We'll go from there. I don't know how many level 1s I'm going to be able to find around here, but... And there are resource tiers to the maps, but to the kingdoms, but the darknest and the monsters don't follow those tiers, only the resource tiles do. So no matter what resource level you are in, you can always get a variety of darkness, which is great. Depending on what kingdom you're in and where you are positioned. Alright, I think that's probably enough for now. So, let's start looking at these. So, right off the bat, you'll never know what phalanx or you'll never know the lineup of the darknest until you hit it, and then you can see it in the report. Sometimes they can benefit you, sometimes they can destroy you, so it's really hard to say. So what you end up doing is you look for darkness like this that have only 2 different troop types. So this darknest has tier 2 and tier 1, but it only has infantry and cavalry. Alright? So all you would need to do to beat this is to send a bunch of cavalry. Alright? So the cavalry will take out the infantry and boom, done. So it doesn't really matter what your phalanx is or anything like that for the most part, as long as you're finding darkness that have 2 troop types and then sending the one stronger troop type between the 2. So this is the easiest way to take on rallies. If you're used to hitting like level 2 rallies or darkness and you want to hit a level 3 darkness, look for something like this. See if we can find another one. It's hit and miss. Okay, this is even better. Look. 1 troop type, which you don't see this very often, but when you do, just go for it. Alright, so all you'd have to do here is send infantry. And you could send, really, if you had tier 2, you could probably get away with sending like 20 or 30,000 infantry at this, and you could win. Because infantry is twice as strong as range. So even if you sent tier 1, you could probably get away with sending about 30 to 35,000 infantry, T1 infantry, at this nest, and you could destroy this thing. Always watch for wall HP too, because sometimes, see, look, 25,000. This one is a chump. Like this one's got 3,000, but this one has 25,000. So you might want to send some siege. It's always good to send siege unless you get strong enough to where walls don't matter. Alright, so always send a little bit of siege. I recommend for each darknest, for level 3s, I used to send about 50,000 siege in each rally, which isn't a lot, but it's usually enough of extra damage to take down the wall without penalizing how many regular troops you're able to send in the rally. So for something like this, I'd say probably 10,000 would probably be more than enough to take down this wall. This one. Okay, so this one's a little tricky because it has 3 troop types. If you had to hit it, not knowing the phalanx or the lineup, I would probably definitely send cavalry, because cavalry is going to get you through that front line if it's infantry phalanx, assuming it's infantry phalanx, but we don't know. I would start out with cavalry just because there's not a lot of those archers, and there's a bunch of grunts that you can use to drop the morale during the fight. Because it doesn't matter how many troops you lose, what matters is that morale. So really the morale is like how many troops you lose versus how fast they die. So you could have a bunch of troops but still lose because your morale drops. So you want to make sure you're sending the right troops so that the enemy's morale drops faster than yours, and that's how you win. So that goes with rallies and attacks towards castles too. Like, morale is very important. So let's look at another one. Well, 20,000. Okay, so yeah, send siege. Usually you're going to send siege until you and your guild get really big. So this one is a good example. So notice how there are 3 troop types, but one of the 3 troop types is siege. Siege doesn't matter at all with darkness because you don't have a wall to take down. And siege does not damage troops. So this, like, all you have to do is send infantry, because it's infantry, range, and siege. Just send infantry, it'll kill the range, and you're home free. Although this does have 114,000 infantry. So that's going to be a little tricky. It doesn't look like you're going to get very many kills on the range. If you want, you can send infantry and a little bit of cavalry, but I wouldn't send too much cavalry or your morale will drop really fast. So you send like a little bit of cavalry, maybe like 10% cavalry out of the whole rally. That way you're not losing too much morale too quickly, and if the cavalry dies off, they die off and your morale stops dropping rapidly. But that should give you a little bit of an extra damage boost for that front line. But even if it's ranged phalanx, you'd still do pretty well because you're sitting a bunch of infantry. So this one's kind of a toss-up. It also depends on your stats and if you send your leader, your research. So this next one. Oh man, we're getting a bunch of these good darkness. Look at that. Another 2 troop type. So this one you'd send infantry because infantry range, and range is weak against infantry. Then again, looking at how many infantry there are, you might want to send a small amount of cav. I wouldn't send more than 10%. And maybe some siege depending on how much that wall HP was. And if your scout report, like your scout research is low, you may not be able to see the wall HP. You might just have to send siege every time. Oh look, this one's terrible. Look at that. So unless you can smash these dark nest easy, I would stay away from this. If you're trying to beat the next level dark nest, then I would stay away from this. Like, don't bother doing with this, trying to take this one down. You're wasting your time, basically. Unless you know you can do it easily, then I would probably send... See, the weakest link in here is range. Range has the least amount of troops. So what I would do is probably send... I would send cavalry range, like cavalry and range at this, a mixture, because your cavalry will be your front line, even with an infantry phalanx. You know, if you haven't unlocked any other lineup, if you don't send any infantry at all, your cavalry will be your front line, and then your range will assist your cavalry on taking down the enemy cavalry. All right. Your cavalry will take care of the infantry, and it's going to be a combined effort to take down the enemy range, but there aren't very many. So chances are you're going to drop that morale before you even kill off all the troops. That's another good thing that I forgot to bring up, is that with darknest, you do not need to kill every troop in that darknest. You just need to drop the morale. That's the biggest, most important part, is just dropping that morale. Alright? So don't worry about trying to kill every troop in there. Worry about taking out as many troops as you can, as fast as you can. And of course with this, you're going to have to send siege, because it has 28,000 wall HP, which is the highest wall HP we've seen out of the reports that we've looked at, all for level 1 darkness. So let's look at level 2. See if we can find any level 2. There's one. Send a scout. There's another one. And these compositions that you send at these will change a little bit with troop tiers as the darkness gets stronger, because the stronger the darkness is, the better of a chance it has to have a higher troop type, or troop tier, I mean. A higher troop tier. Did I just scout that? I don't know. Let's see what we got here. Let's wait for him to come in. Get me a drink of water. Alright. So we're going to have 4 waiting for that last one. So as you can see, there's a huge jump in wall HP. So that last set of darkness we saw, the highest wall HP that I noticed was 28,000. Look at this. 318,000. That's more than 6 times of an increase, right? It's about 6 times. I think it might be slightly less, but no, it's definitely more than 6 times. 6 times bigger. It might even be 10 times bigger or 12 times bigger. But if we look at this, it has traps, and the reason I haven't talked or said anything about the traps is because the traps don't hit your troops once that wall breaks. So if you take down the wall as fast as possible, you don't have to worry about the traps. Alright, so the wall will respawn if you fail that darkness, and you have to try to rally it again. That wall does not go away. It comes back in full HP. So this is another 2 troop type darkness. So you just simply send range at this darkness. And word of advice, unlike, just like this whole video, is you want to send 4 infantry and 4 cavalry when you send an all-range rally. Alright? The reason for this is because it gives you a few more seconds to drop the darkness wall before you start losing too much morale. Because if they start hitting your infantry instantly, it just gives you a couple more seconds, and it's been proven that it increases damage. A lot of players have done tests with this over and over again, and it does increase the total amount of damage that you deal. More damaged troops on the enemy side when you send 4 infantry and 4 cavalry with a full range march. So they will die off or they will get wounded, but you don't have to worry about your morale dropping too much. 4 troops is one of those little tiny squads that run up to the wall. Like if you notice, if you watch the video of the battle, you'll see these tiny little squads that are like running up, and there's usually 4 of them across for the front line. You'll see little groups of troops. Each one of those groups at minimum is 4 troops. Alright? That's why we send 4, because if you send 4, it'll make one of those little squads. Alright? So you want to send 4 troops, or 4 infantry, 4 cavalry, with a full range march. And you want to send siege, because look at that wall of HP, man. So for level 2 darkness, you typically do want to send tier 2. If you can, send tier 3, alright? Because the more tier 3 you have in here, the better. But as you can see, there aren't very many tier 3. So it is possible to take these down with tier 2. Very, very possible. Especially if you're preying on the darknest weakness. Which with this darknest, it is cavalry that is weak if you send a ranged march. Alright? So that's the trick with these darkness. That's how you take them down. Let's look at another one. This one has 305, still over 300,000 wall HP. And this is another 2 type or two type troop. I don't even know what you want to call that. Like 2 troop type darknest here. And this one you would send infantry, because it's infantry range and you break even going against the infantry, but you also take out the range. Now the tricky thing with these is that you have to break the front line if it is an infantry phalanx. If it's in it, I think if it's in cavalry phalanx, the range will be first. Yeah. So these are kind of tricky. The only way that this is going to be problematic is if it's in like a infantry phalanx or infantry wedge, where the infantry's in the front. But even then, if you send enough infantry, you can crush that front line. Alright, so it's not really that big of a deal. Like I said earlier, I'm not worried about traps, because when you drop that wall, the traps are useless. So this one's a 3. Man, look at that difference. Okay, so 324,000 infantry. So if you had to hit this, you don't want to send cavalry, because that range will eat your cavalry up. And it'll drop your morale. So you want to use infantry and range for this. Your infantry will take care of the range, and your cavalry will take care of your cavalry and the enemy cavalry and the enemy infantry. So I would send, I mean not your cavalry, your infantry will take care of the infantry and range, and your range will take care of the cavalry, which will technically slow down the enemy cavalry from destroying your front line, which drops their morale faster than yours. So do not send cavalry on this, or you'll lose every time. Don't worry about the siege. And these anti-scouts, you never really know what to do with them. If you want to hit one, I say send a random blast, like a full infantry or full cavalry or full range at this. You have a 33% chance of victory. Well, maybe 66%, because really 1 out of 3 times, because there's only 3 troop types that you really need to worry about. So you can either go neutral by hitting the same troop type, or you can get an advantage, or you can get disadvantage and fail. So it's really hard to say. You pretty much just have to hit it once and then look at the scout report if you fail, and then decide whether you can do it knowing the composition of the dark nest. So these are a little tricky. Let's look at some threes here. That's a 3. Alright, we got 4 of them here. I think that's probably enough for now. We'll wait for these to come in. And then I get another drink of water. Deja vu, right? Alright. So we have another jump in wall HP, but this time it's only like times 3. It's like 3 times stronger. And then look, even a level 3 darknest still has tier 2. Like there's no tier 3 in this. So there's a huge wall jump, like wall strength increase, but the troops are usually it's like a tier 2 tier 3 mixture, the same as tier 2, but there's more wall HP and there's more troops. So you notice the last darknest usually had about a total of 500,000 troops or less. As you can see, this one is closer to 1,000,000 troops. Well, it is 1,000,000 troops. So you notice the difference between tier 2 or level 2 and level 3 darknests. So this one you guys probably already know is that you would send cavalry at this, even though there is less cavalry than infantry or whatever. You would still send cavalry at this because you want to destroy that infantry to drop the darkness morale. Okay, so that's what you would drop. That's what you would send, and obviously you'd probably send siege. Now, at this point, if you're attacking level 3 darkness, or you've talked to someone that is really strong and they're like, oh, well, my guild attacks level 4 or level 5 darknests and we don't use siege. I'll explain that here in a little bit. But level 3 darknest is kind of at a balancing point where sometimes you need to send siege and sometimes you don't. And the reason for that is the members in your guild, if you guys are attacking these at level 3 darkness, the members in your guild are establishing a good amount of troops. They're some of them might be dabbling into tier 4, maybe not yet, maybe close. Your stats are getting higher, your gear's getting better. So at this point, you're starting to get strong enough to where you don't need siege to attack darknest. But every once in a while, you'll find a big darknest where you will need that siege. All right, so with tier 3, or with level 3 darkness, it's like that balancing point where it starts to tip in your favor, where you start to not need siege. Even up to the end, I always would send about 50,000 tier 3 siege to hit these level 3 darkness, just so I don't have to go, oh crap, I should have sent siege because that wall was big, you know. So it's just to eliminate the problem, so I don't have to worry about if I'm actually going to beat that darkness or not. So of course this one you would send range and 4 infantry and 4 cavalry. Alright? Remember what I said about the full range marches. 4 infantry, 4 cavalry. Every time. Increases your damage. Alright? So always do that. The wall HP on this is much higher than the level 2 darkness that we looked at. This is like 4 times higher. So you definitely want to send some siege to this, unless you're a bigger guild with a lot of troops and you can send like a full 2 million range. You're alright. So 2 million range, you might not need to send siege. It depends on how many troops your guild has. Like I said, Level 3 darkness is a balancing point, right? So it all depends on how strong your friends are, how many troops you can pull together for a rally. So there's a lot of different factors calculating into that. So this one you would send cavalry because it's infantry cav. Alright, so you'd send cavalry. Million wall HP. That's pretty much it. I don't even really look at the wall HP that much anymore. I just send the troops. This one's tricky. But it looks like the cavalry is the weakest link. So if you had to attack this thing, I would definitely send siege because you don't want the traps messing with your troop numbers too much. And I would send infantry for the front line, and I would send infantry. Can't send cavalry, so you'd have to send infantry range, which is weird because this nest is infantry range, right? But you can't send cavalry because the stealth snipers here will completely wreck your front line if you do that. You'll lose too much morale. See, that's why I stay clear of these dark nests. I just look for one that has like 2 types, so where it's easy. I can just send a blast and hit it. That's what a lot of the big players do for those level 5 dark nests. They get really hard. They just blast it. They just find an easy one and blast it. And you notice this one's got a bunch of tier 3. I didn't notice this right offhand right away. So this one's got a bunch of tier 3, and the other ones don't really have. Oh, I take that back. This one's got a bunch of tier 3. But that first one, where's that? That first one doesn't really have any tier 3. So there's huge might differences between these. So you notice this one's got 11 million might, and that last one has 19. So you can kind of get an idea of how strong the nest is by the might. So if you're just breaking through a ceiling and you're trying to take down the next level of dark nest, try to find the one with the lowest might, alright, and scout it. And even if it has 3 troop types, see if you can take it down. If you can find a low might one with 2 troop types, blast it. And if you can take it down, then it shows your improvement with your stats and stuff, you know. So there's always little tips and tricks with taking down darkness that a lot of newer players don't know unless they make a friend with an older player that knows all this stuff, or if you watch my channel, right? So let's look at some 4s, which I take 4s down every day. And I rarely fail these. Very rarely fail level 4s anymore. I used to fail them all the time. But I've gotten strong enough to where I can take them down. As long as I get enough troops, but my guild members are usually pretty good about sending enough troops to take them down. And since I only rally a couple times a day, usually my guild members are needing some essence. But even if they don't, we usually join each other's rallies just for the support, because that's what good guilds do, right? Like, you help out your friends. Like, that's what you do. So let's look at some of these. Here's counter spy. Those are always annoying, but usually sometimes they have good essence. This isn't gold, but usually they have the next tier of essence. But this one doesn't. It must be low might. So this one has some tier 4 traps. Yikes. 6 million wall HP, which is way bigger than what we were just looking at with the level 3. And as you can see, this one's a bit weaker because it does have tier 3 and it doesn't have any tier 4. Some of these larger level 4 darkness do have tier 4, but majority of the time they just have a crap ton of tier 3, alright? And so a lot of guilds won't be able to take these down unless they have a bunch of tier 3, if not tier 4, to help out with the extra damage. So this one you would definitely hit with Cavalry Blast, and sometimes it's toss-up. So let's look at another one. Look at that, 2.3 million wall HP. It's not as big as the last one, but this one has 2 million troops as well, whereas the one we just looked at has 2.4. This one is 2.1. So you definitely send a range blast at this. Another counter spy. 2.6 million wall HP. And defenders, 2.2 million. You'd send range blast. So you kind of get the idea of what you're looking for when you're trying to take down a darkness, especially something that you haven't tried before, something that's stronger. You kind of know what to look for now. And in the beginning, most guilds are not strong enough to send a really big blast rally. And whenever I say blast, I mean full infantry, full cav, or full range. You just don't have enough troops to do it. Especially if your guild members are not disciplined enough to stay sheltered or shielded, then their troops constantly get wounded. They're not going to build up enough troops to be able to pull these off. So you're left with like mixed rallies, which all you can really do when you try to do a mixed rally against this, you send a bunch of range, as much range as you can, and then you send see, this is the thing with these. You can't send cavalry as filler because the range will kill your cavalry. You can't send infantry for filler because the cavalry destroy your infantry. So it's really hard to do mixed rallies on darkness because of this reason. Because look, this is almost half and half here. It's still got 1 million range and 1 million calves, so you can't really do a mixed rally. So some of these can get really difficult. And when you do send a blast, like a full infantry, you want to make sure the heroes that you send are all giving some sort of stat to the infantry or to the range. So if you do a range blast, full range, you want to send range heroes. And you want you want to send Tracker. You want to send Death Archer. You want to send Snow Queen, because all three of those have infantry attack or range. Sorry, they all have ranged attack. If you go into their skills, like their passive skills, you'll see that they all have 30% range attack when they are gold. All right, when they're fully ranked up and they're gold, they give 30% range attack, each of them. That is a deployable. If you click here, let's just look at one, because I feel like I'm rambling. If you click on one, you will look at the passive skills, all right, the battle skills, and you look at range boost. You ever wonder what this little symbol here is? This little blue symbol. This means it's a deployable skill, all right? If you click on it, it says right here, when deployed. Now, that means that this only applies when this hero is deployed in your army, all right? In your rally, in your army, in your attack. If you send the troops to a tile, this stat is deployed to your troops, all right? So what this does is it increased range attack. It's a boost by 30% when deployed. If this hero is inside your castle, whenever you send that march out or that rally out, this range attack boost does not apply. It has to be in your march, okay? So when you're setting up a rally, here I'll show you. That last one we were looking at. So if I were to set a rally on this thing, alright, I'm doing an infantry blast. I don't have enough troops to do an infantry blast on this account alone. My guild members would have to send the extra troops. And I'm kind of low on troops with this account at the moment because I have other projects of building like traps and stuff. So I'm building troops for that instead. So if I set a rally and I do my 4 infantry, my 4 cavalry, and then the rest I send range. Now how I would set up my heroes is, obviously you want to send your leader, but I would have Rose Knight or Goblin as my leader. And the reason for that is because Rose Knight and Goblin both give army attack boost 20%. And the reason you do that instead of, well, if I'm doing a range blast, I would use Rose Knight as my leader, because with the range attack boost, the only free-to-play heroes that have that 30% attack boost is Tracker, Death Archer, and Snow Queen. All right, so that leaves an empty space. That means that there's a hero that I can put in there, but I don't have any more that has that 30% attack boost for the range. So I supplement with Bombing Goblin, who also has that 20% attack boost. All right, so that's why I would set up like this. Now, when you're doing infantry blast, you can do Rose Knight for your leader, and you can do. Geez, I don't know why I'm having so much problems remembering their names at this moment. Demon Slayer has infantry attack boost, and some heroes that I don't have completely up like I do on my main account. What is it? Soul Forger. So oops. Soul Forger has that attack boost as well, and then Oathkeeper has that attack boost. And what was that other one? Because there's 4 of them. Oh, Sea Squire. So Sea Squire also has that attack boost, the infantry attack boost. So this is how you set up an full infantry blast on like a darknest or attack. Is you'd use these 5. All right, if you're free to play. For cavalry, send Rose Knight and Bombing Goblin, because there's only 2 free to play cavalry heroes that have cav attack. All right, cavalry attack, and they are your Night Raven. I can't remember names for some reason. So Night Raven and Child of Light. So Child of Light and Night Raven both have that 30% cavalry attack. So you don't really have any other options for attack damage. So what I usually do for this is I supplement with Death Knight, because Death Knight has cavalry HP. I'm not really too worried about the cavalry boost, the defense boost. I worry about the HP, because HP is stronger than defense. Like, HP helps your troops more than defense. This has been tested many, many, many times, and it's been proven, alright? That's why I use Death Knight, because Death Knight has cavalry HP and defense, whereas I think there's another hero that gives cavalry HP, but it doesn't have the defense. And even though I just said defense doesn't add too much, it's better than not having it at all, right? So that's why I set up my cavalry blast like this. So I hope this video helps you guys. It's pretty much the same for level 5 darknest, but level 5 you're going to need a lot of tier 4, and you don't necessarily need tier 5, because people have been taking down level 5 darknest before T5 existed. But I'm actually waiting for them to release a level 6 darkness, because when enough people get tier 5, they're going to want some harder, right? So that's pretty much it for this video. If you guys have any questions, comment below, and I'll get to you whenever I can. I like reading your comments when you do leave them. That's pretty much it for today, guys. Peace out, and be safe.